Hello everyone, this is the story of what if Naruto shattered Tsunade's walls with a single vulnerable night. Before we start, here is a short summary. What would you do if you have to live under one roof in paradise only to find yourselves trapped with your annoying rivals and enemies? Not to mention that your sensei set you up for it. Haruno Sakura, a pink-haired young woman who the past years have grown up and wondered if her infatuation with Sasuke is worth fighting for. Uchiha Sasuke, the last of the Uchiha clan which was destroyed by his brother Itachi. Determined and strong as Sasuke. And it seems like he doesn't give a damn about the others, but will he care when they all live together? Rock Lee, although he is known for having a crush on Sakura, he has other things going on. Discovering himself deep inside and trying to be accepted by the others. Uzumaki Naruto. He is the most hyperactive and annoying character that the others have said in the series. However, he has grown and matured, only to still like Sakura and ramen. Hyuga Hinata. Hinata had been very quiet and nice, and secretly had a liking in the hyperactive guy who everyone thinks is annoying. When they all move together, will she confront him of her feelings? Or will she keep quiet while others walk over her? Hyuga Neji was the #1 rookie of his Ninja Academy graduating class. He was also considered to be the strongest and most talented of all the genin. A member of the Hyuga clan, branch house, Neji can never be leader of his clan. However, when he starts to live with others with different perspectives and lifestyles, will he stop his stubbornness and start to listen to others? Gaara of the desert. He had been feared by others all through his life. Gaara is quite mysterious and an introvert, while the others are loud and expressive. Will this experience suddenly make him realize that he could love others and not just himself? Yamanaka Ino. STILL. She is Sakura's rival ever since they both discovered that Sakura and she both had an infatuation with the cute Sasuke. When she discovers that they will all be under one roof, especially with Sasuke. What tricks does she have up her sleeves? Will she able to finally claim her man? Or will her rival snag him? New beginnings. Sai Naruto yawned as he woke up from his long slumber dreaming of ramen. He got up and brushed his teeth and groomed his blonde hair which was always out of place with the spikes. Naruto then went over to the kitchen and got out a carton of milk and ramen. This time, Naruto checked the expiration date on the milk, wasn't spoiled yet. Carrot. He consumed his delicious breakfast, and then was up and about when he heard a knock on his door. Kakashi Sensei. Naruto bid his teacher into his house. The tall sensei looked around and smiled. Naruto, I see that you've been doing well. Kakashi looked at the dinner table with all the food that Naruto had eaten. Naruto gave an innocent laugh and rubbed the back of his head with his hand. Kakashi Sensei, what brings you here? Is Sakura-chan here? Naruto looked behind Kakashi, but there was no pink-haired girl. Kakashi gave out a laugh and shook his head in denial. Naruto, I have a letter for you, and then he walked out of the door. Naruto looked up from the envelope and went out to his teacher, Kakashi Sensei. Kakashi turned around, and Naruto asked what it was, and Kakashi said that it was a surprise and then left. The curious young Chunin looked at the envelope. Naruto then finally opened it and there was a letter. Congratulations. You have been chosen to live in Come Paradise, with free of charge to the beautiful lodge and of the beautiful cuisine. That will be given to the guests when they arrive. To confirm your consent that you will come to this hotel, be sure to bring this letter to confirm your invitation. Must be confirmed by next week. Naruto's eyes popped out in amazement, and carefully read it again. Free cuisine. Do they have ramen? Naruto held up his fist and smiled. Paradise Hotel, here I come. Ramen soup, ramen chopsticks, ramen backup, ramen noodles. Ramen hot noodles, ramen. Naruto made on his checklist as he waited outside of his house to be. There he waited until an unexpected visitor came toward him. You idiot, are you trying to check up on your ramen? The tall young man in his blue-collared sweater, with white shorts looked at Naruto, as he was checking his list of ramen. Then, the blonde boy looked at him and then dropped his bags. Sasuke. Naruto stood up and realized that he had grown and was about his height, 5'6". Sasuke turned away in shame and looked at the beautiful abode that he will live in. Tell me, Naruto. You don't happen to get an invitation to live here, do you? His dark eyes darted at Naruto, who was startled at first, but then nodded. Damn it! Sasuke looked away, and then both of them felt the ground shake. The two both looked up and saw a tornado of Sakura and Ino running toward them. Sasuke-kun. Damn it, Ino, get away. Sakura's pink hair had grown long behind her back and was flowing behind her. Ino's blonde hair was the same, but shorter than usual. Naruto showed a big smile and held out his arms for Sakura, but then realized that Sakura and Ino were fighting over Sasuke, and not him. He then gave out a sigh, and sat on his luggage. Ino pig, get away. Sakura tried to hug Sasuke, but Ino was pulling her pink hair. Oh yeah Sakura, Sasuke will never like you, 'cause you have a big forehead. Sasuke is mine. Ino grabbed Sakura's hair and she fell down, while Ino went in and hugged Sasuke first. Sasuke immediately shoved Ino away from her, who fell down on the ground next to Sakura. Idiots. He scoffed and then walked away into the building. Sakura softly rubbed the big bump on her beautiful head, and Ino was pouting cross-legged trying to think of a strategy to get Sasuke. Then later, they were joined by a bunch of others, and one of them put an arm around Sakura. Hey Sakura-chan. Rock Lee tried to land a beep on her cheek, but Sakura BBED a hammer and knocked it on his head, then fell unconscious, drooling with hearts in his eyes. After that, they heard a scoff nearby and looked at two people that looked like brothers and sisters. Hinata and Neji, but they are cousins. You are such a fool Lee. Neji went over to the drooling Rock Lee, and kicked his face softly and waked up Rock. I will save you Sakura-chan. Rock final. Lee woke up from his short dreams only to find himself mistakenly hugging Neji, instead of Sakura who was shocked. Sorry, Neji. Rock backed away, while Neji muttered a curse word at him. Hinata was standing there quietly with her hands to her mouth, and her white eyes searched and landed on Naruto who was busy sitting down and looking at Sakura. She then went over with her luggage next to him, and slightly blushed. Naruto, Hinata said in a soft voice. Naruto looked up in acknowledgement and smiled. Hello Hinata. Naruto gave out a friendly smile with his hand behind his hand, and Hinata looked away with hot cheeks. Are you going to live here? Hinata let her eyes lock with Naruto's gleaming blue eyes. Hinata could feel herself weak in the knees, but they were interrupted by a cruel voice. So, are you all going to live in Come Paradise? A voice came from behind the crowd, and they all looked up to see a grown man with his blazing red spiked hair, and a gourd behind him. Gaara. Getting acquainted Tilda. Naruto looked up and saw Gaara. He was dressed the same since the last time Naruto and everyone saw him. Sakura and Ino had their eyes wide opened and Hinata clasped her hands together to her mouth, as if afraid. Neji did nothing, but just close his eyes and looked away. Hey Gaara, how are you doing? Naruto smoothly stood up and went over to give him a handshake. But Gaara just looked at him pitifully. Geez, what's with you? Naruto scratched his head with a big question mark around his head. I see. Gaara gave a sly smile and looked down. Naruto was confused and looked around but realized that no one was doing anything. Just then, Sasuke came out of the building and stopped dead in his tracks when Gaara and he saw each other face to face. Sasuke had a key in his hand and put it in his back pocket of his white shorts, and looked carefully at the guy in front of him. Sasuke, Gaara greeted, and then walked away to the building where Sasuke emerged out of. When Gaara was out of sight, Naruto opened his big fat mouth and yelled out something to Sasuke. Sasuke, did you get the keys? Naruto curiously asked, while Hinata was watching quietly admiring the active blonde in front of her. Cuz, you know that it's time to eat. Naruto gave one of his famous crest smiles and winked. Sasuke didn't answer, and went over to where Naruto stood only to gather his stuff and walked off to a house near the building. Sakura realized what Sasuke was doing and yelled out with her stuff, Sasuke-kun. Wait for me. However, before she could get up, Sakura was knocked out by Ino, who grabbed her bags and yelled out to Sasuke the same thing, and walked with him to the house they were all staying in. On the floor, Sakura could feel steam coming out of her ears, and just got up and patted her dress to remove any dirt, and just walked alone. Sakura-chan. Naruto ran over to her, and gave her a smile, hoping for an escort. Idiot. Sakura punched Naruto down, and Hinata got up and ran over to the unconscious guy. After that, Sakura continued on to bring her invitation to the building, where she will get Sasuke from Ino. Gaara followed Sasuke and Ino in silence as they reached the house. When they went in, Gaara went straight upstairs and claimed one of the rooms that were the furthest from the other bedroom doors. It was perfect. Neji dropped down his personal belongings and sat down on the couch while Naruto and his rowdy mouth entered in loudly into the living room where he dropped his lug. Gage carelessly and headed straight to the kitchen. Hinata arrived into the living room and caught a glimpse of Naruto bobbing his head around the kitchen. She somewhat went pink in the cheeks and decided to go sit on a plump chair across from where Neji sat. Later, Rock Lee arrived last with a huge bump on his head. Does anyone know where Sakura-kun is? His black eyes and thick eyebrows searched the spacious room only to find 3 people, but not Sakura. Rock Lee then gave out a huge sigh, and then plopped down on a chair where Naruto was searching in the kitchen. Just then, he heard some loud chattering down the halls, and Rock Lee smiled and ran to where the noise was coming from. Get away from him, Ino pig! Sakura yelled out at her rival sternly, while her foot was on Ino's head, which was on the ground trying to get to Sasuke's room. However, despite of Sakura's foot on Ino's head, Ino got up briskly and pushed her away at a wall which caused Sakura to lie unconscious. Humph! Who would want a girl with a big forehead, like you? Ino laughed maniacally, and had a fist up in the air. Finally, I've waited for this moment, Sakura. Sasuke will be mine. Ino's long FAIR hair whooshed in the air in triumphant. Just then, Sasuke's bedroom door opened and Sasuke came out and looked at Ino standing proudly with her pointy nose up in the air, and then the unconscious Sakura. Ino stopped laughing and saw Sasuke in front of her. Sasuke, I've been waiting for you out here. Want to have a walk with me? Ino walked up closer to the tall black-haired guy who was at least a head taller than her. With her hands closed together, as if praying, Sasuke looked away and closed his eyes. Move, was all his low voice said. Ino was surprised, and a huge vein popped out of her forehead, but could do nothing as Sasuke walked slowly past her, without even helping Sakura up. When Sasuke reached the living room, he saw a running Rock Lee passing him heading toward the hallway, but ignored him, because his eyes were already occupied on someone else. Neji looked up and gave an angry look in his white eyes, which were as white as ever. Sasuke gave a cruel look while his black eyes bore into Neji's. Neji, Sasuke said, trying to find out why Neji was staying under the same roof as him. Unlike other people, Neji didn't answer and just closed his eyes and looked away. Sasuke then turned and opened the door, and walked out of the house. Meanwhile, Naruto was still busy searching for something in the kitchen. He gave up and scratched his head. Where is the pot? His blue eyes looked slowly around the kitchen until it landed on Hinata, who was right in front of him. Naruto-kun, Hinata said in a soft and shy voice. Naruto had a question mark on his head, and wondered what she was doing in the kitchen, was all Hinata could express as she kindly held out a small pot, genuinely fit for ramen, gently toward her crush. Naruto was surprised and looked at Hinata. Was that in the drawer next to the refrigerator? Hinata looked down on the floor, and slowly nodded. Naruto gave out a happy laugh and put a hand on her shoulder, which Hinata looked surprised but blushed. Thank you. Naruto held the pot in his hand, and put it on a stove nearby. Hinata gazed at him as if she was in a daydream, while Naruto was cooking his ramen. Bedroom troubles. There was a delicious aura coming from the kitchen that it floated into the air and past everyone's nose. They all came toward the kitchen and saw Naruto cooking up one of his specialties. Warm ramen for everyone. Just grab a bowl and chopsticks. Naruto was proud of his cooking, and put the pot down on the stove, and started to serve the others. His blue eyes looked at all of them who were going to eat his tasty noodles, but found out that 3 of them were missing. Humph. Looks like someone doesn't appreciate me cooking for you guys. He put his hands on his waist and went to the living room and found Neji sitting there as if mediating. Hey, Naruto opened his big mouth. Neji didn't answer. Naruto's blood was boiling, and nearby Hinata was getting worried. Steam was arising and waiting to burst out of his nose, like a bull ready to attack. I said, "Hey, answer me." Naruto walked slowly, locking his sapphire-gleamed eyes toward Neji, and he didn't look up. Neji got up and flashed his horrifying white eyes at Naruto, who froze in his state of manner, and then Neji calmly got up and walked past him and went up the stairs with all eyes on him. Hinata ran over to him from the kitchen and leisurely put her pale hand on Naruto's steaming shoulder, who was still recovering from the heat around him. Naruto-kun, Hinata said, and Naruto turned around, and saw that Hinata brought him a bowl to cheer him up. Just then, they heard someone set down their bowl on the counter that it let out a loud bam. Time to pick bedrooms. Rock Lee's black eyes glistened in the light coming through the windows. Everyone looked at him, and both murmured among themselves. They all gathered together and started toward the stairs, and before they took their first step on the flight of stairs, the door flung open. Sakura was so happy to see Sasuke and put her hands together as if she had prayed for her man to come home. She ran to him in slow motion, and said, "Sasuke-kun." However, Sasuke walked past her, and Sakura looked past her, and saw Sasuke starting toward a room past the hall downstairs without even giving a glance at her. Rock Lee was confused and called out to him from the passage, "Sasuke. Where are you going? We're going to pick rooms." Just then, a strike knocked him out and Sakura and Naruto carried high. Upstairs while the others came with him. "That is his room, Lee-san," Sakura whispered, and Naruto thought he had seen a single tear drop from Sakura. Hey, Sakura-chan. But, Naruto was trying to point something out to Sakura. But she yelled out at him. "Keep on going, Naruto," she yelled sternly. "But, that isn't just Sasuke's room." Naruto let it out. Everyone was shocked, and Sakura and Ino listened with their big ears wide opened. "No," Sakura and Ino said in unison. Naruto laughed and pointed at Sasuke's door. "Sasuke and Naruto." Sakura released Rock Lee and held her fist up in the air and cried out. No. Ino punched Sakura down and gradually said, "Incorrect, big forehead. It's him who's mine." A few minutes later, everyone but Naruto in the household reached the top of the stairs where they held onto the railing which then led to a hallway with 2 doors, and then on the other side were the 2 rooms as if isolated from the others. 5 rooms on the 2nd floor, and 1 downstairs. The 5 of them realized that the 2 rooms on the other side were claimed by Gaara of the desert and Neji. Ino went over across the landing and discovered that Neji had a bedroom mate. But not Gaara. Sakura went over and gasped. "Hinata and Neji." It seemed that Hinata didn't complain or yell. Instead she just packed her bags and settled into the room. So far, Sasuke and Naruto in one room. Neji and Hinata in the other and Gaara with his own room. Ino, Sakura, and Rock Lee were all that was left to get a room. 2 more rooms. Rock Lee toward the first door and stopped dead in his tracks. Sakura and Ino. "Wah." Sakura put her hands to her head and cried. Ino slapped her and turned away with her nose up in the air. "Why should I room with you? You are nothing but a pig." Sakura complained with tears streaming down her eyes. "Me, I'm a pig, huh? At least I'm not the one with the huge forehead," Ino smiled mockingly, as Sakura was getting ready to get steamed up. "And besides, Sakura, there is always cosmetic surgery," Ino pointed out. The blonde then held her bags and settled into the bedroom, while Sakura slowly got up. Before she went in, Rock Lee stopped her. "You know, Sakura-san, if you don't want to room with her, you can always room with me. I have my own room." Rock Lee winked a heart at her, and Sakura shoved him on the ground and walked little by little to her doomed bedroom. The morning after sunshine broke through everyone's window, and outside on a little tree, there were little birds chirping for a new day. Rock Lee was still asleep with a bubble enlarging and decreasing in size inside his nose. His long legs had grown over the past year, and he was glad that he was finally more taller than Sakura. Rock Lee's sleeping body was spread over his large bed, and all of a sudden, his door swung open. Rock Lee was awoken by the noise that his visitor was making and opened his black eyes. He thought it was Sakura for a second and hugged her, but it turns out that it wasn't who he expected. "Ew. Get your hands off me," Ino spurted out while she was slapping her hands at Rock Lee. O was only looking for a hug from his crush, unfortunately not her. "Hi, Ino." Rock Lee laughed at what he did and apologized, while Ino was patting her dress from any germs from him. Yeah, anyway, Rock Lee." Ino bent closer to him until they were face to face. "Ino." Rock Lee closed his eyes and puckered his lips as if he looked for a beep, but Ino smacked him, as if to wake him up from his present dream. "Ew. Don't even think about that." Ino crossed her arms together and looked at the upset Rock Lee. "Anyway, Rock Lee, since we met while we were Genins, I noticed that you have an infatuation with my rival here." Ino put a finger on her chin and her eyes landed on Rock Lee, as if hinting him to catch up on her. Rock Lee scratched his head. And Ino's head enlarged and a vein popped out of her temple while she opened her mouth and yelled softly. "Just say it. You like her." While Ino said it over a blown-over Rock Lee got up and scratched his head again. And Ino got frustrated with him. "What? Do you have lice or something?" Ino looked away, and Rock Lee shook his head furiously. "No." Rock Lee got up and Ino looked at him surprised. Rock Lee put 2 fingers up and winked at her with his teeth shining, even though he didn't brush them yet. "My hair is too beautiful for anything to go in it." Rock Lee froze in place while Ino poked a finger at his hair. "I didn't mean it that way." Rock Lee turned away to stop Ino from putting her finger in it. Ino let out a sigh, and stood up to make her face to Rock Lee. She noticed that he grew a few inches, and ignored it. "I have something for you to do." Ino gave out an evil grin. "What?" Rock Lee curiously asked. "I want you to sweep Sakura off of her feet, and keep her away from Sasuke and me," Ino plainly said. Rock Lee turned away and faced the window where there was a beautiful view of the ocean. The crystal waters glittered like diamonds as the sunlight rays shone upon it. Ever since he had been here, he wished that he would bring Sakura with him to have a picnic there. Out on the warm sand, Ino had a fist clasped together and knocked on R.O.C.K. Lee's head as if to find out if he was still awake. "Why?" Rock Lee looked at her and Ino couldn't bear his soft look, and twirled facing the doorway. As she walked out of the doorway, she told him her answer. "If you like her enough, why should you question about it?" Naruto brought out his arms as he yawned in his bed. His blue eyes opened and were full of energy. He got out of his warm bed and looked at Sasuke. But his bed was vacant. Naruto disregarded it and went out of the bedroom and headed to the bathroom. Without even knocking the door to find out if it was already occupied, the stupid Naruto opened the door. And a scream woke him up. "Naruto!" Naruto opened his eyes and he screamed. He closed the door behind him and quivered his head wishing that this had never happened. Then, the door at the back of him opened and Sakura who was in her bathrobe punched him with a fist. "OWWWW." Naruto pushed on his bump that was on the back of his head. Yeah Naruto. That is what you get for going in on me. Perv. Sakura gave Naruto another strike, and Naruto got up and looked at her. "Sorry, Sakura-chan, sorry." Naruto fell down on his knees and waved his hands in the air as if praying for forgiveness. He opened one of his eyes and found that Sakura had steam coming out of her ears and nose. "Naruto, do you know that it is rude to not knock on the door when someone like me is already in that bathroom?" Sakura bent over with her robe around her looking at Naruto. "Sorry Sakura-chan, I really am." Naruto was still on the ground and Sakura bridged and her green eyes bore into Naruto's blue eyes. Later, Sasuke who was in his swimming trunks opened the door and went in. Sakura's green eyes turned from pissed off to happy. "Sasuke-kun." Sakura ran over to him and hugged him. "He looks so nice with his top off," she thought. Her head looked up at him, and Sasuke's black eyes looked into hers. Their eyes were fixed in place when Naruto got up and muttered something. "It's not like you have anything to show." Naruto ran away to hide from Sakura's wrath who obviously heard him. Her green eyes then faced Sasuke, who was still looking at her. She then noticed that her arms were still wrapped around Sasuke's wet and warm body. Wet and warm. Before she could rest her head on his shoulder, Ino pushed her aside and took her place. "Sasuke." Ino snuggled her head into Sasuke, but instead of returning the affection, he gently shoved her aside and started for his room. As he passed Sakura, who was on the floor, he caught a small glimpse of her and then looked ahead. Sakura saw that he finally noticed her, and she had her hands together and smiled with joy. She closed her eyes wishing that she and Sasuke will be together, and when she opened her eyes, she realized that Ino was at the door. Ino had her hands all over the door. "Sasuke, please, let me in," Ino for the first time cried, right in front of Sakura. Her pale legs dropped to the ground and whispered, "I love you." Sakura, who was still on the floor in the living room, was shaken by her words to Sasuke. She went over to her and picked the crying Ino into her arms. Surprised, Ino wrapped her arms around her and cried even more. They stood there for a few minutes, until Hinata and Neji came downstairs. "Excuse me," Ino sniffed away her tears and then ran away up the stairs past the cousins. "Hello Hinata." Sakura for the first time greeted Hinata. Hinata smiled and greeted her back. Sakura looked at the silent guy beside Hinata and smiled. "Hello Neji." Her green eyes smiled with warmth, while Neji's white eyes were cold. Neji, without even saying a word, walked away toward the living room, leaving Hinata and Sakura alone in the hallway. Beach party tilde. Naruto held up the chopsticks up in the air and his blue eyes lit up. His roommates around the table gave the hyperactive guy a confused look. "Naruto, what are you up to now? Is it another one of your pranks?" Sakura had her arms crossed, who obviously haven't recovered from the incident since that very morning. "Nope, Sakura-chan, it's time." But before Naruto could finish, Gaara finally came downstairs. He was already dressed up for the new day and his eyes' malevolence looked around the room and landed on Naruto. When Gaara sat down, everyone but Neji and Naruto dismissed themselves from the table and went away. Naruto had a question mark on his head and was puzzled. He scratched his blonde head and glanced at all the full bowls of ramen he had cooked. Not one of them was empty. Across from the table, Neji silently ate his ramen in peace. His piercing white eyes looked up and saw steam waiting to erupt from Naruto's ears. Neji knew what was wrong and resumed back to his eating. "Why? What's wrong with the ramen?" Naruto got up and inspected each bowl that was on the table. He then went back to his bowl and tasted his noodles, and wondered what was wrong with it. Naruto rubbed his temples and sat down with his head down. Next to him, Gaara looked at him and ate his bowl of noodles. Naruto noticed that Gaara was beside him and smiled happily. "See, the noodles aren't that bad." Naruto's teeth glittered in the sunlight. "You were ridiculous," Gaara mumbled with his breakfast in his mouth. Neji gazed at Gaara and then at Naruto. The three of them ate in silence. When Naruto's ear perked up like a fox. Ironic Naruto stood up and pointed a finger at the windows. Neji paused consuming and Gaara looked at Naruto, who was still pointing at the windows. "So they need cleaning, who cares?" Neji muttered, but Naruto shook his head and pointed straight at the windows. Gaara and Neji looked at the windows. Then two light bulbs turned on in their heads and knew what Naruto was thinking. Beach party. A few minutes after that, Naruto told the others that they were going to have a bash on the seashore. Everyone agreed and then went up to the house to change into their bathing suits. When everyone was dismissed, Ino and Rock Lee were the only ones left outside. Just right after that, Rock Lee started for the abode when Ino held onto Rock Lee's shirt. "Rock Lee." Ino strictly approached him. She let go of him, and Rock Lee listened. "Remember our deal? You get Sakura and I get Sasuke." Ino reminded him, and then strolled past him leaving a dazed Rock Lee. Heh. Naruto was on the sandy beach with his towel around him. He looked at the crystal clear blue waters and smelled the salt which the cool breeze wafted toward his nostrils. His blue eyes then wandered around and found Hinata walking toward her, but then he looked the other way and found Neji and Gaara in their own isolated places on the beach. Hinata was in a black one-piece bathing suit with a beach hat and brought her towel and then settled next to Naruto. Her pearly white eyes smiled in the sun and took a glimpse of Naruto who was sunbathing. Probably dreaming of ramen again, she thought. She then looked toward the waters and saw Sasuke in his blue swimming trunks down on the shore looking out in the direction of the ocean. Then, Hinata heard loud voices trailing down the shore and saw Sakura in her pink tankini with a crimson-colored bandana, and Ino in her black bikini. Obviously, They were chasing after the same guy. Sasuke-kun. Sakura ran down the wet sand, and as she approached Sasuke, Ino pushed her toward the waters and took her place. Sakura spit out some salty water and held up her fist. I will get Sasuke soon. While Ino was busy trying to get Sasuke to notice her, Sakura was still in the cold waters when a hand was held out to her. Sakura-san, need help. Rock Lee held Sakura's hand and helped her up. They were both standing face to face, and Sakura felt her emerald green eyes staring at Rock Lee's black eyes. Sakura never noticed that his eyes were the color of the black onyx, glittering and full of mysteries. Thank you, Lee-san. Sakura looked away, but Rock Lee gently put his palm and cupped it on her chin, and pulled her toward him. Remember my promise, I will protect you until I die, Rock Lee softly whispered into her very own ears. Lee-san. For a while they were in Rock Lee's arms and just stood there on the waters for a few seconds until Rock Lee pulled away from her. Before Sakura could catch on what was going on, a huge splash came onto her. We've never had a water fight, have we, Sakura-san? Rock Lee laughed, and a startled Sakura slowly crept up a smile on her face. I'm gonna get you. Sakura pushed him into the water and was laughing. Rock Lee reached up to the surface and his cheeks were red and he speckled some water at her, but Sakura kicked some at him, and soon they were racing across the beach trying to get the other wet. Back on the beach, Hinata and Naruto were still next to each other sunbathing. Naruto then woke up and realized that he got sunburn, and immediately got up and tried to run off the pain. Hinata looked at Naruto who was burning up, and went over to him. Naruto-kun. Hinata handed him her aloe gel, it'll help the burning pain, Hinata. And Naruto went back to where their towels were. Naruto sat down with Hinata helping him to rub some cool gel onto his back. Ah! Naruto yelled out in pain. Hinata was worried and softly spread it on his sunburned back. It was as red as a lobster. Are you okay, Naruto-kun? Hinata faintly asked him, and Naruto slowly nodded. A little satisfied smile crawled on her face, and her pale face was blushing slightly. Later, when Hinata was finished with the lotion, Naruto turned to her and thanked her. Hinata smiled and Naruto realized that it was the first time he had seen her smile. It was pretty, he thought. Without realizing it, Naruto found himself attracted to Hinata. He had never noticed that Hinata had helped him a lot, and he had never thanked her. First, it was the Chunin exam, the written one. And she offered him to copy it off of her, but he refused. And then some other stuff she did, and also he repaid her by beating up Neji when she was nearly killed, and they were never seen talking to each other. Naruto tried to think of a way to pay her back of all the good things she had done for him, until he came up with an idea. He looked at Hinata in a way he had never looked at anyone before, except Sakura. But this time, the girl he looked at smiled and accepted him. Acceptation, but not rejection. Hinata saw Naruto looking at her in a caring way, and she beamed at him with some butterflies in her stomach. Naruto then broke the silence and asked Hinata a question, and he wasn't sure if she would answer back, but he did anyway. There was only one way to find out, and it was to ask her. Say, Hinata, I was wondering. Well, I've been thinking. Naruto was stumbling over his words, and to keep him from doing that he took Hinata's pale hands and held it for a while. Will you have dinner with me tomorrow night? Not here though, it's a surprise. Naruto asked her. Hinata was surprised at his very own words and thought that it was a dream. But the fact that she could feel Naruto's own warm hands, made her forget that it was a dream. It was real. Freeze a crowd tilde. The sun rose from the horizon and the bright rays reflected on the crystal waters. Also, the sandy beach nearby the house was wet from the small tides washing over the surface. Ino was on her bed with her knees up to her chin. She looked to her left and saw Sakura, still asleep from the beach party yesterday that had tired her out. Ino had an evil grin and slightly blushed. She then fell back on her comfy twin bed and closed her eyes as she recalled of the events yesterday at the beach. Flashback. Yesterday at the beach party. Sasuke-kun. Sakura ran down the wet sand, and as she approached Sasuke, Ino pushed her toward the waters and took her place. Sakura spit out some salty water and held up her fist. How pathetic. Big forehead is so ridiculous, she will never get Sasuke. Muahahahahahaha. While Sakura was in the water still complaining, Ino motioned Rock Lee to do his part, as she continued to run after Sasuke. Rock Lee nodded and then went over to Sakura. Sasuke. Ino ran over to her crush that was standing alone on the warm sand looking out into the ocean. His eyes then turned over to Ino, who was sprinting down the beach to reach him. Finally, Ino arrived next to Sasuke, and stood with him. An awkward silence crept over them as Ino tried to think of how to strike a nice conversation with him. What do I do? Should I say that he looks cute? No, Sakura already said that. Your muscles have certainly become more visible. Ino poked softly at Sasuke's biceps, which were enlarged ever since the training. So, Sasuke, why do you always look at the ocean and not at me? Ino blocked his view with her hand, and Sasuke broke his gaze and stared at the blonde. For a while, Ino got irritated and just opened her mouth. Sasuke. Why can't you just say something? Is something wrong? Ino closed her eyes and looked down at her feet in the sand. Ino then caught an idea of why he isn't answering, and she immediately touched her forehead looking for something. Sasuke, is it because that I have a zit? Ino walked in front of Sasuke. Sasuke, for the first time in their conversation, he shook his head and then turned and walked away. Ino was shocked at his response and froze to where she stood, and thoughts swarmed in her head. Sasuke, I'm not gonna let you go. All of a sudden, Ino ran down the beach and had her arms around Sasuke and stopped him from walking away. Never had she ever had a guy walk out on her. And she won't let that happen. Just then, drops of tears fell on the wet sand and Sasuke noticed that Ino still held him from the back. Sasuke, please, don't leave. No had her head rest on Sasuke's back waiting for his response. Sasuke responded by turning around facing a teary-eyed Ino, and simply said it to her. I do not feel the same way that you feel for me. Sasuke flatly replied, and Ino gasped. Before Sasuke could even turn around, Ino grabbed his head and pulled it down to her and beeped him. It only lasted for a while and Sasuke pulled away from her. I know that you don't feel the same way, but could you at least give me a chance? Ino held his hands up to her face and beeped it as if she will never hold those hands ever again. Sasuke realized that Ino really liked him, and the only thing he could do for her was a hug. He then gently pulled away his hands and then put his arms around Ino and embraced her. Sasuke. They then pulled away from each other and then gazed at each other. Ino then asked him if he wanted to give it a shot, and Sasuke just nodded. Ino then smiled and then beeped him hard on the lips and then hugged him. As a cold tide washed over their feet as they held onto each other. Back in the bedroom, Ino was still on her back dreaming of Sasuke and her. Later, the blonde girl got out of her bed and washed up for breakfast. When she came out of the bathroom and then went downstairs, she saw Sasuke on the couch. Without giving a second thought, Ino went over and sat down with him. Sakura was still in her sleep and then whispered a name. Sasuke-kun, she softly muttered in her sleep, and then Sakura felt someone hold her hand, and then she opened her eyes. Sakura was surprised and then quickly got her covers and held it close to her to prevent the unexpected visitor from touching her. Lee-san, her green eyes stared tenderly at her visitor. He was already dressed for the morning and he smiled, revealing some pearly white teeth. Morning, Sakura-san. Rock Lee stood up and held out his hand just the same way he did at the beach the day before. This time, Sakura gladly accepted it and he helped her up. Rock Lee then waited for Sakura to finish up on brushing her teeth and washing her face. When she came out they reached the hallway which led to the stairs downstairs. Sakura thanked him, as they walked together downstairs. When Sakura and Rock Lee entered the living room, Ino then gave Rock Lee a warning in her eyes as if to lead her away from the living room, but it was too late. Sakura saw the two holding hands on the sofa. Sasuke-kun. Sakura happily ran over only to find him already occupied with someone else. Good morning, Sakura. Sasuke and I were just finishing up on something. I think that we both mind if you stay here listening in on our discussion. Ino gave a triumphant look and then scooted closer to her boyfriend, who was still staring at Sakura, and you also heard the phrase of three's a crowd, am I right, Sakura? No, Sasuke-kun, what do you see in that Ino pig? I thought that you were different. Sakura's green eyes were hurt and devastated, and her smile then disappeared. And probably won't appear again. Oh, well, I just wanted to say good morning to you both, and I'm happy for you too. Sakura tried very hard to smile, but she couldn't help her tears from flowing out of her hurt eyes. She dismissed herself and then ran out of the room to the restroom. Ino smiled and then responded to Sasuke, "Now, where were we?" She landed a peck on his cheek. And all Sasuke could do at the moment was put his arm around her as they both sat in silence. Then, Ino slipped a satisfied look in her eyes at Rock Lee, who then nodded his head. "Finally, I have something that Sakura doesn't have." Sakura turned on the faucet and let the water run down on the sink. Her pink hair drooped down limply down from her shoulder, for her hair had grown for the past years. With her head facing down at the sink, she then found herself crying, and she tried to hold herself to stop crying, but the tears won't stay in, for her heart was aching. Sakura then fell down onto her knees and covered her face, keeping her warm tears from flowing. "No, it can't be." Sakura looked up and realized that the sink was overflowing and got up and turned off the faucet. Her green eyes observed the water subsiding down into the drain, and realized that, like the water, her hopes and dreams are going away from her reach, down the drain. "Ino, Sasuke-kun likes her, but not a girl like me," Sakura softly said to herself as she looked at the mirror. Now, her green eyes were now of a distinct shade of a dull color of green. Her rosy cheeks were now all blotchy and reddened from the weeping. And her pink hair, which used to be full of life, was now lifeless and sagging down from her shoulder. Her reflection was of a girl who had liked the guy of her dreams for all of her life. And now her ex-best friend stole him away from her. Her ex-best friend, Ino, Yamanaka Ino. All of her life, she had hoped that Sasuke will acknowledge her and even say something to her. Any word from his mouth addressing it to her, Sakura would die for it. Ever since they had been with Kakashi-sensei's team with Naruto, her love for him grew more, only to have him not return it. For Sasuke-kun to like Ino and not her, this Sakura couldn't understand, and probably won't ever know why. An ordinary day. Hinata and Naruto were in the kitchen trying to make breakfast. Her current boyfriend is trying to attempt some eggs, and Hinata helped him scramble it, since she knew that the only thing that Naruto could cook is ramen. While instructing him, her kind white eyes caught a glimpse of a couple in the living room across from where Hinata was. Hinata tried to look closer and realized that it was Sasuke and Ino. "Why is it all oozy?" Naruto held a chopstick and poked at the egg, which some liquid then squirted at him, and he cried out in pain. "Naruto-kun." Hinata quickly wet a towel and then put it over his left eye, and his right eye thanked her with gratitude. "Hinata." Naruto held her hand, which was still holding the towel, on his left eye, and pulled her closer until they were a nose away from each other. Naruto closed his eyes and drifted forward until Hinata pulled away and looked away. "What's wrong? Is it me?" Naruto questioned her with a blank face. Hinata shook her head and said that it was too early for them to beat yet. Naruto smiled and understood Hinata, and then the two of them resumed back to scrambling the eggs. "Hinata, are you still up for the dinner tonight?" Naruto held up the pan and Hinata helped him with some plates. Her smiling pallid eyes easily told Naruto her answer, and then they resumed back to serving the eggs. Something seems to be missing." Naruto scratched his head and looked around. "I've got napkins, plates, eggs. What else?" Naruto had a question mark on his head and Hinata put a hand to her mouth and giggled. "Naruto-kun, aren't you missing some ramen?" She blushed and opened a drawer where there were packages of ramen waiting to be consumed. "Heh, I knew that. Thanks, Hinata." Naruto opened the plastic bag and got out a pot, filled it with water and started cooking it. While his girlfriend looked at him with wonder. 5 minutes passed and everyone in the house came downstairs and from other places to gather at the table to eat breakfast. Naruto and Hinata sat next to each other while Ino and Sasuke sat together across from them. Gaara and Neji were at opposite sides of the corners, and 2 seats were missing. Naruto poked Hinata gently and asked her where Sakura is, and Hinata shrugged. Just then, Sakura came in and everyone looked at her. She was a mess. Rock Lee came in after her and they both sat next to each other next to Ino, but Rock Lee sat next to her, hoping to cause no tension. Hinata looked at Sakura, Her green eyes were now a dull color and her cheeks were blotchy from crying. Hinata looked at Ino and she was the same, and Hinata wondered what happened between those two. She then took a glimpse of Sasuke and Rock Lee, and then she realized that Sasuke and Ino was now a couple, and Sakura was left in the dirt. Everyone at the table all ate in silence. And when they were done, they brought their dishes and bowls toward the sink, and Naruto went to wash the dishes, while Hinata stayed and helped clean the table. Ino and Sasuke walked out of the door arm in arm. And Hinata caught Sakura looking down and went upstairs. Hinata decided to cheer her up so she finished wiping the surface and then followed Sakura. When Hinata reached to the top of the stairs she heard some soft weeping from one of the doors, and she went in and found Sakura kneeling before her bed. As she walked in, Sakura looked up and Hinata kneeled beside her and started a conversation hoping to cheer her up. "Hello, Sakura." Hinata put a hand on her shoulder and tried to coax her and Sakura tried to smile. "Here, you may need this, Hinata brought you some napkins," and Sakura thanked her and used it to wipe her tears and blow her nose. "I guess we've never talked in a long time, huh?" Hinata smiled gently and Sakura laughed softly. "Nope, Sakura," simply answered and then looked out the window. "Sakura, what happened?" Hinata sat back and then listened as Sakura slowly told her the whole story. And now they're together. Sakura used another clean napkin and blew her nose. Hinata gave the upset girl a hug and then she said, "You know what, even though Ino has Sasuke, you still have Naruto and me." She beamed at her, and Sakura thanked her again. They then talked some more. And soon enough they became friends. Sakura was back to herself and Hinata was glad that she had made her well. Speaking of Naruto, well, since you know him and all, with being in the same team. Well, I was wondering if you'd like to help me on our date tonight, Hinata asked Sakura. Her green eyes brightened to her usual color and her cheeks turned rosy and normal. "I would love to help you out," Sakura smiled, and then she realized that Hinata brought her a headset and microphone. Sakura gave a shocked look and then laughed. "You want me to follow you too?" Hinata nodded and gave her the earpiece. "This is how it works. You speak into the microphone and then the earpiece will be in my ear so I can hear you," Hinata instructed her and filled Sakura into the details until she understood everything. "Thank you, it's just that this is my first date," Hinata confessed and her cheeks slightly blushed. Sakura smiled and put a hand gently on her shoulder and told her that she was lucky. "I didn't even have my first date yet, so you're lucky, and I'm happy for you." Sakura grinned and then the two of them hugged. Back downstairs in Naruto's bedroom. Naruto was just finishing up his directions to Rock Lee. "Yes, and then I will be able to hear you." Naruto handed his accomplice a microphone and held an earpiece. Rock Lee was confused at all of the technology and gave him a toothy smile which glittered in the sunlight. "Got it." Rock Lee held the supplies that Naruto gave him. Rock Lee then looked at the clock and realized that it was noon. And then said goodbye to Naruto and then went outside. Naruto gave out a huge sigh and then fell backwards. Finally, Naruto was relieved that after a long time of explaining to him about how each tool is used and what he is supposed to do, Rock Lee finally understood what he meant. "Remember, it's tonight at 7:00, Naruto reminded Rock Lee, and he nodded. And back at Sakura's room, Hinata told Sakura again, "It's tonight at 7:00, okay?" Sakura nodded and Hinata smiled. The happiest and most distressful place on earth Part 1 tilde. It was exactly 7:00 at night. Naruto and Hinata were getting ready for their first date. This time, Naruto dressed differently than his usual orange jumpsuit. Instead, he dressed up in a casual orange sheer tee and khaki pants, seems the kinda the same Hinata dressed up in a black dress which brings out Hinata's dark blue hair, which had grown down to her shoulders, which was in curls. In her bedroom, Sakura dressed up casually in her usual clothes and got everything set for Hinata's date. She put the earpiece in her ear and put the headset and microphone in her handbag and then headed to Hinata's room. Meanwhile, Rock Lee was in his normal clothes and gathered up his headset and microphone, and he was ready. Naruto knocked on Hinata's bedroom door, and Hinata opened it. Her date held out his hand and gave her one of his famous smiles. "Ready to go, Hinata?" Naruto asked her. "Yes, Naruto-kun," Hinata blushed and then they both walked down the stairs and then they were out the door, with Rock Lee slyly following them. Sakura soon came out of the house and she saw Rock Lee outside pursuing the couple. Lee-san. Sakura went over to him, who was startled from her voice. His black eyes smiled with a secret hidden behind them, and Rock Lee put a hand behind her head and answered, "Oh, hello Sakura-san. Beautiful night, isn't it?" Rock Lee couldn't help it when a big sweat drop appeared on his forehead. Sakura looked at him suspiciously and noticed that he had a wire wrapped around his ear. She went closer to him and touched his ear, and Rock Lee stepped back. "Oh, this, hee, it's nothing." Rock Lee put his hands in front of him to prevent Sakura from coming closer to find out what he was up to. Sakura sighed and then put up a finger and pointed at him. "Don't tell me that you're wired too." Rock Lee gave a guilty giggle and then put his arms down and looked below at his feet. "Sakura-san, it's not what you think," but before Rock Lee could get a chance to explain, Sakura held out an earpiece that she carried and smiled. "We were both set up to help them, huh?" Sakura laughed and then put the item into her ear, and then walked past him. Rock Lee tried to gather up the information of what had happened just then, and then he caught up with Sakura and stopped her. Sakura looked at him with a puzzled look and Rock Lee held her an arm. "Want to go together Sakura-san?" Rock Lee offered his arm, and Sakura smiled. "Tonight, you will be my date, then." Rock Lee laughed as the both of them continued on. Naruto-kun, Hinata sat down onto her comfy seat when she saw their dinner table with 2 candles that were lit, and a violin player beside the table. She was surprised and Naruto sat down across from her. "It is beautiful, Naruto-kun," Hinata observed the beautiful china and the eating utensils which were of a silvery color which sparkled from the candle's light. "Ha, no problem, you're worth it, Hinata," Naruto laughed as the waiter handed the couple their menus. "May I take your order, sir?" The patient waiter waited for Naruto to answer as he searched through the noodles section. Ironic Hinata smiled and then ordered her meal. "I'll have the Anko special, sweet bean paste wrapped in mochi skin." Hinata politely ordered her meal to the waiter, as Naruto was still looking through the noodles section. Carrot. Naruto gave a chuckle and then put his menu down and the waiter had his pen ready. The blonde guy said, "I would like some ramen noodles, with extra spicy seasonings, and please hold the chicken soup, and do you have oriental mix?" Hinata and the waiter had a sweat drop on the side of their heads and the waiter answered him. Well, do you want your ramen noodles to be in any kind of soup?" The waiter wrote down on his notepad. And Naruto shook his head. "I'll have the oriental mix soup, please." Naruto smiled, and Hinata blushed. "He is so adorable," she thought, and then she heard a static in her ear. "Sakura." The waiter had a question mark on his head and then sighed. "Would you like anything for dessert, then?" He addressed to Naruto and Hinata. They both shook their heads and Hinata touched her ear to remove the static. Hinata, is something wrong with your ear?" Naruto asked, while he is also fiddling with his own ear. Hinata blushed and shook her head. Hinata, a voice came out from the earpiece. And only Hinata could hear it. Hinata cleared her throat in the response, and the voice then continued, "Okay, I have the connection, and it's a little unclear around here. Since I'm also in the restaurant with you," Sakura answered. Hinata was surprised and calmly looked around the room, while Naruto was still busy fiddling with his earpiece. Rock Lee answered into the earphone, "Naruto. Hello, I'm in the restaurant, when you need help just clear your throat." Naruto heard him and then looked around the restaurant. The fiddler was next to them playing a nice slow song. And Hinata was listening with pleasure. Naruto was nervous and then he started a conversation. "Hinata. So, how are you doing?" At a table nearby, Sakura heard what Naruto said, and talked into the microphone. "I'm fine. Thank you Naruto-kun." "I'm fine, thank you Naruto-kun," Hinata repeated. "Sip a bit of your tea. Guys think that it's BP when their dates do that," Sakura informed her as she sipped her cup of tea watching the couple trying to strike up a conversation. And a waiter nearby came over to her and asked for her number, and Sakura knocked him down, and muttered, Guys, Hinata said, and then she realized what she just said. Naruto looked at Hinata and asked her if she was all right. Nearby, The waiter kept on nagging on Sakura for her number. No. Get away from me, perv. No. Get away from me, you perv. Hinata yelled out at her. She was even surprised at what she just said, and Naruto beeped his head to his side and scratched his head. After Sakura got rid of the perverted waiter, she realized that her microphone was on when she said all those stuff. Damn, Hinata answered. Her white eyes were shocked and then held her ear to fix it because she thought that she heard the wrong thing. Hinata. Naruto smiled. Is something wrong? Naruto asked. Hinata smiled and shook her head. Rock Lee was at a table looking at Sakura. She's having a good time, huh? As Rock Lee observed Sakura knocking down some love-struck waiters coming up to her. Naruto then replied to Hinata, she's having a good time, huh? Hinata gazed at him in a disappointed manner. Who is having a good time? Hinata put her hands on her waist. Huh, oh, nothing. Ha ha. Naruto laughed and then fiddled around with his ear to remove the static. Sakura moved her cup aside and then looked at Hinata, and she heard Naruto saying something about another girl. Who are you talking about, Naruto-kun? Sakura spoke into the mic. Hinata agreed of what Sakura said into her earpiece and asked Naruto, who are you talking about, Naruto-kun? Naruto gave her a confused look and tried to answer. Rock Lee lied back onto his cushioned chair and then sighed. Sakura-san, tisk. He was disappointed that a lot of guys are all over her. Naruto wasn't sure if it was A-san or Chan. It was A-chan, he thought. Sakura-chan, tisk, he said in a naughty manner, and then Hinata gasped with her hands to her mouth. Naruto opened his blue eyes and then put his hand to his mouth as if to prevent his mouth to blab out some words. Naruto-kun. Hinata looked saddened. Hinata, it isn't what you think. Naruto moved his hands around in front of him to persuade Hinata that he doesn't like Sakura anymore, just Hinata. Back at Sakura's table, she talked into the mic and apologized for messing her up and that she will not screw up ever again. Hinata received the message and understood. Near Sakura, she was waiting for Naruto to talk, so she looked around the room and thought that she saw someone familiar. His black hair and his pale skin. The happiest and most distressful place on earth. Part 2 tilde. Sasuke-kun. Sakura whispered, not knowing that she also whispered into the microphone. Back at the dinner table, Naruto asked Hinata, so, what are you thinking of? Naruto tried to talk to Hinata. Hinata answered, Sasuke-kun. Naruto was surprised at her words. As well as Hinata, she couldn't believe what she said. Naruto-kun, I don't like him. Forget what I said, I don't mean it. Hinata explained, and Naruto still wasn't convinced. The waiter came with their meal, and Naruto looked at his noodles with oriental mix and was too upset to eat. Hinata looked at her dinner and was too depressed to eat it. Sakura was shocked that she saw Sasuke with Ino. What the hell, Ino pig? Sakura talked into the microphone, sorry, Hinata. I think that we need to stop, since I keep on messing up. Hinata understood and she knew that she was on her own. Naruto was still staring at his noodles, and Hinata reached over and touched his hand. Naruto-kun, her white eyes glittered with kindness and Naruto smiled. When she cheered him up, Naruto had the spirit to eat his noodles, and they had their own conversation with no one to tell them what to say. Sakura got up and walked over to the table near her. She nodded. That Ino had her straight hair down past her shoulders and she was talking to her date. Get away from him, Ino pig. You don't even deserve him, you pig. Sasuke-kun, you will be mine once again. Her hands then clasped together into a fist and she reached Ino's dinner table. She looked straight at Sasuke-kun and Ino. Sakura could tell that Ino was finishing up on her conversation. Such a beautiful night. Ino held Sasuke's hand, and Sakura felt her blood boiling inside of her. Sasuke realized that Sakura was there at his table, and looked into her raging green eyes. He smiled and Ino noticed that he was smiling. Oh, you're smiling, Sasuke. Ino had hearts in her eyes as she squealed. Hello, Sakura. Sasuke looked at her. Sakura was startled at his words and then smiled as a fur. Ino was staring at both of them looking at each other. Ino stood up and Sasuke broke his gaze at Sakura and then looked at Ino who was shaking with fury. Sakura looked at Ino, and she smiled. Ino, Sakura greeted. However, she didn't get a response that she expected. You You bitch. How dare you? Get out. Ino held up her fist at Sakura, which was at least a cm away from her nose. And then Sasuke got up and blocked them. Sakura was shocked that Sasuke was in front of her, blocking Ino from her view, and he was facing his back to her, as if protecting her. Sit down, Sasuke bluntly said to Ino. Sasuke, please move. I want to show this bitch something that she will never forget. Ino was shaking with anger, but Sasuke blocked Sakura from her. Sasuke, move. Sasuke just stood there and people nearby looked at them. Sakura felt her cheeks become warm, and memories flowed through her mind. Sasuke had blocked her from harm, like the time that they were fighting Zabuza. And also offered to hurt the ones that injured her when they were at the Forest of Death. All of this was Sasuke. Sasuke-kun. Sakura had her hands to her chin as if scared. She was confused why Sasuke was doing this to her, even though he already had a girlfriend. Ino was shocked at Sasuke, and she couldn't bear it. Her fists were trembling and Sasuke went toward her until they were facing face to face. Before he walked away, he told Ino something. If you want to hurt others, don't hurt the ones that I love. Sasuke turned on his heel and then walked away, leaving an enraged Ino and shocked Sakura. A few minutes after Sasuke disappeared, everything resumed back to where they were doing. Sakura looked at where Sasuke exited and felt her blush. Sasuke-kun. Hell yeah. Just then, Ino looked down at the ground and spoke to Sakura. Outside, her eyes were full of enrage and Sakura's green eyes were glittering with fear as the both of them left the restaurant and went out in the parking lot. Ino looked out into the sky and Sakura went up with her. There was an awkward silence that crept over them, and Sakura stared into the sky with Ino. Do you know that when we were best friends, people teased you about your big forehead? Ino reminded Sakura softly. Sakura nodded and could still remember all of the kids that teased her. Yes, and that when you saw me with bangs. You told me that the reason that people make fun of my forehead is because that I hide it. Sakura closed her eyes. And then, you found out that I also liked the same guy that you did. Ino still gazed at the stars. Sasuke-kun. Sakura answered back and she looked down at her feet. And then you told me that since we liked the same guy, we were now rivals from now on. Ino sighed and glanced at Sakura, who was still looking down at the ground. Don't look at the ground, Sakura. Look at me, Ino said. Sakura gasped and then gazed at Ino. We're still rivals, Sakura. Being with you here alone and talking to you is actually a big deal to me, Ino replied. Sakura's green eyes stared at Ino as she continued on. I usually don't talk like this to people that I am rivals with. Ino looked at her and the two of them were locking eyes with each other. Ino. Sakura was all she could say. Ino resumed gazing at the bright stars. Like stars, they are just big balls of gas and they shine from the distance. Then their time comes and then their gas die out. Ino explained and Sakura looked at the stars. Like us, we were best friends and then all of a sudden, it dies out, Ino looked beside her as if to find Sasuke there, but no one was there. Goodbye, Sakura. Ino left Sakura in the parking lot as her pink hair flowed with the cold breeze which then silenced the parking lot of all noises. Naruto was still eating his noodles, unaware that Sakura and Ino were yelling at each other, and neither was Hinata. When they finished eating, Naruto got up and held out his hand to her. Hinata accepted it. He then led her outside where others were eating outside with some violin players were playing some romantic songs. Naruto led Hinata to the middle of the floor and then slow danced with her. Hinata felt some warmth rising inside of her, and she felt as if she was dancing on clouds with just Naruto and her. Just the two of them. For the first time, the guy she had always liked ever since they were students, she had always dreamed of Naruto to ever acknowledge her, and even share a few words with her. She closed her eyes and hoped that everything wasn't a dream, but real. Real love. Naruto held Hinata closer as they danced slowly to the song. He smelled her hair which had the aura of fresh cherry blossoms. Naruto felt happiness inside and was grateful that he had someone who accepted him for who he was. One who acknowledged him. Hinata felt Naruto's warm body around her. She felt safe. After the song, they looked at each other for a while, and then they both pulled in and shared their first beep. Solitude. Gaara stood out on the beach and his piercing eyes looked out onto the surface of the clear waters. He still had his big gourd that he always carried around onto his back, with some special memories contained in the gourd. Blood from his victims and sand. It's been so long since he fought. He was impatient, and wanted a battle. Blood, blood, he thought. Deep into his thoughts. Living with these idiots has done nothing to benefit me. Humph. Look at that annoying blonde out on the beach. Do you think that he would ever come out of his ridiculous shell and start seeing things for real? I'll probably laugh in front of his face if he did. Poor Naruto. Poor Naruto. I feel sorry for him that blood rains from the sky pitying him. No wonder he has trouble with girls. Especially that Sakura girl. I wasn't quite surprised when she cut her lock of hair when she was in the forest of death. Although it was sad to see all that beautiful long pink hair goes to waste. Sakura will never succeed, because when I first saw her I sensed fear in her. Fear. It's obvious and clear to me that she and this other blonde want Sasuke bad. Sasuke. Damn, Sasuke. I found out that he was from the Uchiha clan that was destroyed by his brother, Itachi. Sadly, the little Sasuke was the only survivor that outlived them all along with his special Sharingan. 2 girls to pick from and he doesn't care. 2 girls. I think that Sasuke is going to pick on of them, after what happened. Of course, Sakura or Ino. Ino and Sasuke are going out as far as I know. Haha, Ino and Sasuke. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard that those 2 were actually boyfriend and girlfriend. And I thought that Sasuke wouldn't even consider a girlfriend. I guess I underestimated him. Speaking of couples, Naruto and Hinata is the talk at the house. Whenever I mutter it under my breath it sounds kinda well mixed, concerning those 2 lovebirds. Lovebirds. Ridiculous. I shouldn't even say that. Ever since their first date, the 2 have become inseparable. They would wake up in the morning and meet each other in the kitchen to make breakfast for the rest of us. Even though I don't come down often, they still make some eggs and ramen for me. I am Gaara of the desert, and everyone dares not to even have eye contact with me except for my annoying siblings. I am so glad that they are out of my way, since they decided to decline the invitation, because they know what I would do to them if they decided to go. When I first came to the house, I was kind of expecting more people, since the invitations go to everyone in each troop. Or maybe, they refused the offer. Why did I even accept the invitation? When I received the letter saying that I have been accepted to live in this beach house for free, I remembered myself thinking that this offer was full of shit. But then I found myself packing my belongings and heading straight to the place. Why? I guess that I'll never know, will I? When I first met my roommates, my first impressions on some of them were obvious. Sakura. Cute, but too self-conscious about herself. Ino. Blonde. Is a rival of Sakura in trying to be the first one to get Sasuke. Naruto. Annoying, no shit. Sasuke. Mysterious ever since that clan, and strong. I sensed something powerful when I met him. Rock Lee. Trying to discover himself, and has a crush on the pink-haired girl. Hinata. Quiet, and shy. Has a crush on Naruto, sadly. Neji. Recently reconciled with Hinata after the whole thing with the Hyuga family thing. Speaking of Neji, I haven't seen him that often since his room is next to mine. He doesn't talk much like me, even between meals and outside activities. An introvert like myself, as surprising as I've been, since the beach party. Neji found himself a friend. I couldn't believe my ears because I just came in and went up the stairs when I heard a voice coming from Neji's room. Sakura. I wonder why she was there, since Neji excused himself out of the beach party for being sick. Right. He was sick all right. Same old Sakura trying to befriend the silent Neji. As if she could do anything, but I doubted her. In fact, for the first time I heard him laugh. Laugh Neji. Hyuga Neji. Quiet Neji. He laughed. So the 2 became friends a few nights before Hinata and Naruto's first date. It just seems to me that Sakura was the only one who got through Neji. Amazing huh? Anyway, another roommate that I found out about was Rock Lee. I pity him, 'cause the girl he wants is the one that he can't have. You want what you can't have, is the saying that he could use. And besides, instead of drooling his disgusting mouth, He has been spending much of his time with that Ino. I do know what is going on. Ino tells Rock Lee about what to do to prevent Sakura from going near Sasuke and her. Typical Ino. Overall, the roommates that I have are annoying and stupid. I can't believe that I even accepted the offer. Gaara broke his gaze on the waters and continued walking on the hot sand. He turned his back on the beach house and, beyond the distance from where he stood in the house, he could hear yelling and fighting. He scoffed and closed his eyes. Why did I even bring myself into this mess? He said to himself as he opened his eyes again and then realized that the sun had disappeared under the horizon and the sky turned bright red. Bright red like blood. Tootsie Lollipops tilde. Naruto yawned and stretched out his long arms and blinked his sapphire blue eyes. He twitched his whiskers and smiled one of his famous and annoying smiles. The blonde fell back onto his plump bed and spread out his legs and arms and closed his eyes. Flashback. Back at the night of his first date with Hinata. Just the two of them. For the first time, the guy she had always liked ever since they were students, she had dreamed of Naruto to ever acknowledge her, and even share a few words with her. She closed her eyes and hoped that everything wasn't a dream, but real. Real love. Naruto held Hinata closer as they danced slowly to the song. He smelled her hair which had the aura of fresh cherry blossoms. Naruto felt happiness inside and was grateful that he had someone who accepted him for who he was. One who acknowledged him. Hinata felt Naruto's warm body around her. She felt safe. After the song, they looked at each other for a while, and then they both pulled in and shared their first beat. Back at Naruto's room, Sasuke woke up and looked at his roommate who was drooling from his dream with hearts in his eyes. He let out a scoff and then got out of his bed with his pajamas on. When he opened the bedroom door he felt someone jump over him, and now both of them were on the floor. Sasuke. Ino squealed with delight. Ironic pigs do squeal, hee. I-N-O. Sasuke tried to talk, but Ino's body closed off his air supply. Oh, Sasuke, sorry. His girlfriend winked at him when Sasuke let himself up and tried to breathe some air. Ino blinked twice at Sasuke as they stood in utter silence. Her eyes then landed on herself and tried to measure herself. She then held up 2 fingers and winked with hearts at her eyes. Sasuke. Ino then stopped herself and then drew head down her blonde hair which had grown longer, laid limp down on her shoulders. Sasuke's black eyes listened attentively as he was trying to massage his chest which Ino landed hard on. Carrot, am I really that heavy? Ino poked herself, and normally she usually pokes other people than herself. I knew it, I should have lost weight when Sasuke and I went out. Damn you cupcakes. Yummy. Chocolate, cupcakes. Sasuke looked at her and then shook his head without even telling her personally that she is not chubby. Ino then smiled and then pat Sasuke on the shoulder, but her hand accidentally had some extra pressure when it landed on Sasuke's shoulder that Sasuke yelled out ouch. Ino's sweat dropped and had a guilty laugh. She then held Sasuke in her arms and apologized, who then accepted it. Sakura was in her room combing her pink hair and then dropped her hairbrush and then looked on the floor. She knew that combing her hair was useless now that Sasuke has a girlfriend. Her green EYs then shivered with the fact that her ex-best friend finally snagged the man of her dreams away from her. Just then a voice from the other side of the room talked to her and Sakura was startled and then smiled when she knew whose voice it belonged to. His black hair was the same hairstyle that he had always had, and he had his arms crossed with his piercing white eyes following her every move. Neji, crying doesn't do you any good. He lifted his head up and his pallid white eyes which was full of ice and hatred now was filled with kindness and warmth. Neji, I'm sorry, seeing girls cry makes them pathetic, huh? Sakura's pink hair covered her ashamed face, but then Neji went over to her and brought out his hand and wiped the hair away from her face and Sakura gazed at him. You're not pathetic. Neji managed to smile again. And Sakura was the first one to make him smile. The two of them sat on Sakura's bed and then sat with a comfortable silence, as they thought of what happened days ago at the beach party. Flashback. At the beach party, Sakura and Rock Lee were splashing water at each other, and then her opponent held up his hands in defeat and then let out a big sigh. Okay, you win. Rock Lee answered with a wink. Sakura laughed and then looked at Sasuke with Ino. Her hands then clasped together into a fist and it shook with fury, and Rock Lee didn't pay attention to her but to Ino, too. I will get Sasuke back. Hell yeah. As Sakura saw Sasuke and Ino together at the surface on the sandy beach, she caught a glimpse of Neji walking down the beach toward Naruto, who was busy with his sunburn. Her green eyes then followed the guy, who then headed straight to the beach house. Lee-san, I'm going back to the house for a while. Sakura then got out of the waters and Rock Lee nodded. Sakura then reached the steps of the house and saw Neji go up the stairs, and then followed him. She then got a towel to dry herself so she won't get the carpet wet. Sakura then went up the stairs and then went to Neji's room. Neji was sitting on his bed in silence and then turned around and saw Sakura on the other side of the room on Hinata's bed. He was startled and let out an anime-style surprised look. Sakura giggled and then relaxed on Hinata's bed as the two of them stared at each other. Neji looked away but Sakura broke the silence. Neji, Sakura leaned on her knees trying to get Neji to speak, whose icy white eyes pierced her green eyes. Then something made Neji surprised, and usually when he stare at people, they try not to look at him, but this girl. Sakura, she is still looking at him. What do you want? Neji looked away. Sakura wasn't sure what he meant and so she let out a happy laugh and then answered. You're shy, aren't you? Sakura smiled. Neji looked at her like a hawk waiting for his prey, but Sakura didn't do anything but smile. I'm not, Neji bluntly answered. Sakura went up to him and they were face to face. How come you don't talk much? Sakura asked him with curiosity. Neji could sense a defeat in Sakura as she tried to make him talk, and so he replied back, because talk is cheap. Neji expected Sakura to give up and walk away. But instead she was still at his bedside looking at him. Her green eyes glittered in the sunlight as it shone of the gem emerald, and her skin was pale as porcelain, and her smile was gentle and warm. Neji turned his head away, and thought to himself, what is up with that girl? She is still smiling at the way I'm treating her. Sakura then smiled at him. Neji couldn't understand what was going on. And then Sakura opened her mouth. You know what, Neji? Sakura bent closer and Neji looked at her as he listened with attentiveness. Sakura leaned closer until her lips were close to his. And Neji closed his eyes. What is this feeling? I hate these people, Neji thought as he closed his eyes and leaned forward only to find himself fall on the floor. He looked up, and saw Sakura down with him and they were both on the floor. You're unique, Sakura simply said as her green eyes smiled with kindness. Neji's colorless eyes looked at her with curiosity and his cheeks warm after what happened. She winked at him and then Neji started to laugh. Sakura blinked her eyes as if to wake up from a dream and saw that Neji was laughing. Laughing? What's wrong? Is something funny? Sakura had a question mark on her head, and Neji shook his head and then answered. It's you that's funny. Neji looked at her now with a serious look. Sakura nodded with him and then laughed. Back at Sakura's bedroom, Neji and Sakura were still together on the bed. Sakura then looked at the person beside her and then whispered quietly to him. Neji. Neji opened his eyes and then asked, well, I'm not sure if I should tell you this. Sakura bit her lip and then Neji bent closer to her. Her green eyes were now full of fear and uncertainty as she looked into his white eyes. You can tell me anything, Neji answered. Sakura closed her eyes and waited for a few seconds until she told him. I think that you are like a Tootsie Lollipop. Sakura closed her eyes as if expecting Neji to be offended, but only to find that he was laughing. Why are you laughing? Are you laughing at me? Sakura looked at Neji who was laughing, and then he slowly stopped. No, I'll never laugh at you. Neji looked at her. Why do you think that I'm this Tootsie Lollipop? Sakura smiled as she pointed out, you are like a Tootsie Lollipop because to get THR out of you I have to work on the hard edge to get to the soft side. And when she said the last few words, Sakura poked at Neji's soft stomach, and he smiled. The two of them then went downstairs and then went to the living room to sit down on those comfortable couches. Sakura sat down beside Neji and then they rested their own heads on each other and then closed their eyes as they tried to cherish the moment. A few minutes later, Sasuke and Ino went into the living room. Sasuke. Ino squealed with happiness as she had her arm around Sasuke. Ino then realized that Sasuke stopped dead in high tracks, and then she looked ahead and saw Sakura with Neji. Sasuke's black eyes looked at Sakura and Neji. Sakura then looked up and saw Sasuke with Ino, who was obviously trying to get his attention. "Sasuke-kun," Sakura whispered, and then Neji woke up. His white eyes then met Sasuke's black eyes. Ino and Sakura then watched as the two of them were staring at each other. The two girls could tell that the guys' old rivalry had awakened. "Sasuke." Neji stood up, and Sasuke looked at him. "Neji," Sasuke answered as he saw Neji whisper something in Sakura's ear before he departed. When Neji was out of the room, all was left was Ino and Sasuke and Sakura. Ino then went over to Sakura and walked around her as if to see if she was worthy of anything. Well, what do we have here, Sakura?" Ino said. Sakura ignored her and saw that Sasuke had been staring at her the whole time. "So tell me, Sakura, how long had this thing been going on?" Ino looked at her deviously. Sakura looked at her and retorted back to her, "It's only a friendly thing, Ino pig." Ino was offended at what Sakura had said, and before she was about to pounce on her like a lion, Sasuke stopped Ino. "Let's go." Sasuke looked at Sakura when he spoke to Ino. Ino was confused and looked at the both of them. "Okay, Sasuke, I would do anything to get out of here than be in the same room with Big Forehead." Ino snubbed Sakura as she grabbed Sasuke and went out the door. But before they approached the exit, Sasuke stopped Ino. "She doesn't have a big forehead." Sasuke looked at Sakura, and she blushed. Ino had a vein that popped from her temples and then walked out of the door, leaving Sasuke in the living room with Sakura. "Sasuke-kun." Sakura saw Sasuke walking closer to her. "Sakura." Sasuke bent closer to Sakura, who then closed her eyes. Their faces were face to face and cms away from each other. Sakura closed her eyes and puckered her lips, and Sasuke bent closer, closing his eyes. Sasuke pulled away, facing his back toward her. Sakura still had her lips waiting for a beep, and then Sakura fell backwards in defeat. Sasuke turned around and Sakura got up. They looked at each other for a few seconds, and before Sasuke disappeared from the exit, he told Sakura something. "Don't let Ino talk down to you like that, and if she does, she'll have to go through me. All I have to give tilde." Ino dug her foot under the warm sand as she sat comfortably on the soft surface of the beach. Her blonde hair was now held down and some strands were hanging in front of her face in a natural way, while her long mane gently brushed against the sand. Her eyes looked out at the ocean and into the crystal blue waters. The breeze streamed past slowly, leaving a scent of the fresh salt from the waters. Ino then leaned back onto her elbows and then realized that there were only her footsteps in the whole area. Ino looked to her side as if to expect Sasuke to be there. He wasn't there. Just then, Ino saw Sasuke set himself down onto the sand beside her. His black bangs flowed with the wind and his black eyes then looked at Ino. She looked away and the two of them sat in silence. "So, where were you?" Ino sat up and glanced at Sasuke, who was looking back at the house. "I've been waiting for you out here." "I had some stuff to do," Sasuke simply responded. "I see." Ino wasn't at all persuaded by Sasuke's pretext. Sasuke noticed that Ino wasn't like herself and asked her, "Is everything okay, Ino?" "Yeah," Ino replied. After that, the couple sat together and looked at the sunset together. It was a romantic setting. But only one thing was missing. They weren't in each other's arms. "It's a beautiful sunset, huh?" Ino moved closer to Sasuke, and he didn't answer. His eyes were obviously looking back to the house. "Sasuke." Ino raised her voice as if trying to get a schoolboy to pay attention in class. Sasuke's head then darted back and looked at Ino. Ino was expecting an apology. But all he did was just sit there without even opening his mouth to engage in a conversation. Ino then realized that throughout their whole relationship, she was the only one actually making an effort in the conversation. Ino then decided to break the ice, and she wanted to know if their relationship with each other was genuine. "Do you love me?" Ino simply asked him while her eyes were laid on the sunset. Sasuke then broke his gaze and looked at his girlfriend and then looked at the sand. "Sasuke, it's a simple yes or no question. Do you love me?" This time Ino slowly moved her head towards Sasuke and patiently waited for his answer. Sasuke didn't answer. Ino then got up with her clothes covered with sand. Sasuke noticed and all he could say was, Ino. Ino clasped her hands together into a fist and it shook with confusion and distress. Her blonde hair felt limp from her shoulders and her clothes were covered with sand. Sasuke then got up and reached for Ino. Surprisingly, Ino slapped his hand away from her. What's wrong, Ino? Sasuke opened his arms, but Ino didn't run into them. What's wrong, Sasuke? You're telling me what's wrong. Ino could feel warm tears streaming down her cheeks. Everything is wrong, Sasuke. Ino covered her face while she cried. Sasuke went over and wrapped his arms around her, but Ino pushed away from his embrace. Don't. Ino rejected him. Sasuke then basically put his hands in his pockets and looked at Ino, whose face was now blotchy and red from the sobbing. What are you going to do, Sasuke? Just stand there. Ino wiped the tears from her face with her hands. Sasuke held up his hands up in defeat and then told her, well, what am I supposed to do if you keep on pushing me away when I try to comfort you? Ino then realized that she did push Sasuke away from her when she was weeping. She pushed him away. The blonde couldn't believe what she did. All these years she had always wished to be in his arms, and now she got what she wanted. Ino was now his girlfriend, but she felt that her heart wasn't whole when she was with him. And now, she pushed Sasuke away, and worst of all, they haven't had their first beat, yet. Later, there was a cold breeze which then shivered down Ino's spine. The cold then made Sasuke break the silence between them. I don't think we should go on like this anymore. Ino was startled by those words and then calmly walked to Sasuke, and her blonde hair was now flowing with the wind. Why? Ino asked. She ran toward him and started to cry. Ino tried to embrace Sasuke, but he refused it. She then started hitting his chest and yelling out, Why? Sasuke, why? There was no response, again, because Ino found Sasuke looking back at the house again. Sasuke, what is it in that house that's more important than you and me? Sasuke didn't answer and kept on gazing at the beach house. This time Ino looked at the abode and she froze still in her position. Out on TSUNADE'S balcony was two people talking and engaging into a warm and comfortable conversation. This then ate out of Ino's heart because she's always wanted it to happen to Sasuke, but that will never happen. Sasuke, we can be like that. Ino tried to smile, but his black eyes were still gazed at the couple. Ino was confused and then watched more closely to the two people and then only a gasp came out of Ino's mouth. The laugh, the pink hair, the big forehead. Sasuke was looking at her. Ino couldn't stand him looking at her rival, and so she cupped his face with her wet hands and turned his head to face hers. Her fingers caressed his face, and traced his facial features softly. Why, Sasuke, what do you like in her that I don't have? Ino still held Sasuke's face and there was a blank expression on it. Her patience. Sasuke answered Ino's question. Ino let go of Sasuke and then started to laugh. Patience. Are you sure we're talking about the same girl here? Ino couldn't help but log. Because the Sakura she knew would do anything to have Sasuke. Sakura is not at all patient. Haven't you even noticed the way she has been trying to get her paws on you ever since she met you? Yes. But has she done that while I was with you? His response made Ino stop laughing. Exactly, Ino. Ever since we were together she let me go, and stopped chasing me. Now would you do that if Sakura and I were together? Ino felt threatened by Sasuke's last words, and then retorted back, yes, I would. Sasuke, I've loved you ever since we met. Sakura and I sacrificed our friendship because of you. Ino confessed. Sasuke then nodded in agreement, and Ino shook her head in disapproval. Just then, Ino realized something, and she popped Sasuke the question. You like her, don't you? Sasuke looked at Ino and without even giving a response, he slowly walked up to the house leaving an astonished Ino alone on the beach. When he left, the smallest tide then crept up the surface and washed over his tracks. Back on the balcony Sakura and Rock Lee were talking. Rock Lee smiled and winked at her, and Sakura blushed. Sakura-san, did I ever tell you that you've grown more beautiful inside and out ever since I met you? Rock Lee complimented Sakura, which then made Sakura shake her hands in denial. Me, beautiful, no. Sakura then made a sniffle and looked down at her feet. Rock Lee scratched his head and then scooted his chair closer to Sakura and asked her what was the matter. Nothing. Sakura tried to creep up a smile. It's me, isn't it? I knew that I was unworthy of your love. Sakura-san, I have failed. Rock Lee slumped down his shoulders and Sakura comforted him. Lee-san, you haven't failed. Sakura rubbed his back. But it's just that. Well, you don't like me. Rock Lee had his bubbly black eyes shine at Sakura. Sakura smiled and comforted Rock Lee. No, it's not that. We can be friends. Her green eyes smiled with kindness and warmth. Rock Lee's eyes looked as if they were going to cry. But instead he hugged Sakura. Being friends with her was better than not having a relationship at all, since Rock Lee realized that there could be no possible chemistry between them. And he's fine with it. Carrot carrot. When he pulled apart from the embrace, he looked into those glistening emerald eyes. He knew that he had made the right choice. To break the stillness between them, Rock Lee asked Sakura a question. Do you have someone on your mind, Sakura-san? Rock Lee could tell when he looks into Sakura's eyes. Sakura blushed slightly and smiled. Yes, very much, Lee-san, very much. Sakura embraced Rock Lee. Speaking of someone, Lee-san, do you have someone on your mind, also? This question then made Rock Lee blush and Sakura giggled. She bent closer and asked who it was. And Rock Lee shrugged. Carrot carrot. Sakura-san, I have to go, I will see you tomorrow. Rock Lee flashed one of his crest smiles and then ran out into the room near the balcony. I wonder who it could be. Sakura put a finger to her chin and tried to figure out who he could possibly like, and then a surprised look came onto her face and fell out of her chair. Could it be? Sakura put a shaking finger up as if she found out the answer. I know who Lee-san likes. Hell yeah. Sakura stood up and patted her dress to remove some dust and then leaned over with her elbows the balustrade of the balcony with her long locks of pink hair flew with the small breeze. Beep and tell tilde. The sun rose from the horizon and its bright beams spread across the skies which reflected on the glittering waters of the beach. The wind then made some chimes move in a repeating movement and the tides flushed the smooth beach, and some trees nearby gently waved with their leaves and branches as if saying, hello, to a beautiful new day. Ino was in her warm bed and she looked to her side and could see that Sakura was not awake, and then turned her head and faced the wall with a tear strolling down from her eye. She then got up and went to the restroom to wash herself and get her hygiene rolling. When she was done, she went downstairs and immediately went out to the beach to clear out her mind. Ino reached the sandy beach and then plopped herself down with a towel to sit on. The blonde then sat back onto her towel with her elbows holding her as she witnessed the rise and fall of the small tides which only reach a few feet away from where she was. It was only a few minutes until she heard something fall down beside her. She turned to look and saw a basket with an odor of fresh-made muffins and washed fruits, with homemade bread and a pitcher of cold orange juice. Ino then looked up to see who brought this and then gasped. Lee. Ino could only smile with attitude as Rock Lee settled himself beside Ino with a towel. He then started to reach into the basket and brought out a blueberry muffin and held it out to her. Ino refused politely but Rock Lee didn't accept a refusal, so he slowly waved it in front of her to persuade Ino to change her mind. She did. Ino took a small bite and then another larger bite, and then another big one. Rock Lee smiled as he took a bite out of his own blueberry muffin. When he looked he saw that Ino was already finished with her first muffin and was now about to devour her second when Rock Lee stopped her. Ino, you don't have to rush. You have a lot of time to eat that, he smiled. Ino then replied, you're right. Rock Lee could tell that she was upset and asked what was wrong. Ino then gave him the look of a heartbroken girl and he nodded in agreement. Rock Lee sighed and then sat back and started a conversation with her. Ino. Rock Lee tried to get her attention and then continued, what happened? Ino put her second muffin down and started her story, and when she was done, Rock Lee hugged her and rubbed her back to comfort her. The girl was surprised at him and then pulled gently away and looked deep in his black eyes. She had never realized that those black eyes were so friendly and kind. They were the color of the black onyx or midnight where there are no stars in the sky. Ino then saw Rock Lee blush slightly and she smiled and then frowned. You deserve someone better. Ino. Someone that won't break your heart and will make you happy inside and out. Rock Lee sighed. Ino smiled and shook her head. It's okay. Guys are not really my thing. I mean, once you have them, they break you hard. Ino tried to ignore her tears and then Rock Lee embraced her and tried to comfort her. When Ino stopped weeping, they were still in each other's arms and the two of them looked into each other's eyes. They both slowly pulled in and drew closer to each other and then their lips met. Ino quickly pulled away after realizing that she beeped Rock Lee. The guy looked upset and felt rejected, and then Ino talked to him. But, what about our deal? Ino looked away. Aren't we supposed to keep our end of the deal? I mean, I was supposed to get Sasuke and you get Sakura. Ino looked at Rock Lee. Who cares about the deal, Ino? You need to be free. Don't get tied down just because you're on the rebound. Ino, there are plenty of other guys who can make you happy than Sasuke could. Rock Lee pointed out, and before he could finish his sentence, Ino finished it off with a beep. A beep. Soon Rock Lee held Ino in her arms as the two of them sat together. Rock Lee then smiled to himself. He's always wanted to have a special someone out with him out on the warm sand. Hen witnessed the crystal waters glittering like diamonds as the sunlight rays shone upon it. Carrot, Ino. Rock Lee whispered, hoping not to wake up Ino, but she was awake. Yes, Lee. Ino snuggled closer to him, and the guy felt warm inside. Well, I just want to know where we stand together. Rock Lee asked and Ino answered him with another beep. What about girlfriend and boyfriend? Ino smiled. I would like that, Ino. Rock Lee then beeped her as they held each other on the beach. Back at the beach house, Naruto and Hinata were in the kitchen doing their usual stuff, and Sakura and Neji were laughing and talking. And Sasuke was sitting in his own little corner observing the two bubbly people on the couch across from him. Just then the doorbell rang, and Naruto went to the door and then yelled out a surprised shriek. Everyone looked and their mouths dropped to the floor. To be continued, and thank you for watching.